Hello, everyone. How are you doing? This is Daryl Guberman, CEO of Guberman PMC LLC, a quality consulting firm here in Connecticut. Ladies and gentlemen, this video today is about NASA Watchdog report. 100 plus cracks on heat shield, biggest threat to human moon mission. Look, back in the day in '69, all they had is these scientists and engineers, all they had was a slide rule and a computer that can only do a couple operations, and that's it. Now we have all this sophisticated information gathering, and you submit the materials into your computer, boom, they pop out a rocket, and then you build it, and then it explodes. Nothing is really R&D work per se. I'm not saying that this happened with the Artemis rocket that they're designing and building for a moon launch. But, you take a look at the Mars lander, I think they crashed 10 Mars landers before they landed one, and those were at $100 million a copy. The people who are involved, the organizations and companies that are involved, all sit on the American National Standards Institute board. They are contractors like Boeing, and we know Boeing's quality. Lockheed Martin, same thing with them. After their 801st F-35, they're still producing problems, up to including a loss of aircraft, loss of life, and also their LCS Littoral battleship. You have Northrop Grumman. You also have SpaceX and Axiom. And they're all the same, all of them, because they are ANSI ANAB accredited. A gentleman that we have here today is Victor Glover, and he's a cheerleader for the IF, the International Accreditation Forum, located in Delaware. It's an American-based company, but between 2015 and 21, they were watched over and controlled by communist China. He's the cheerleader for that because he stated in an interview, he said, "I love the watchdogs. I love that we have the thing called Inspector Generals." He said last weekend while at KSC ahead of the Boeing Starliner launch attempt. Yes, isn't that nice? He's the cheerleader for it. It always fails. And listen to what he says, Inspector General. There is a watchdog that's watching over Boeing as well called the Department of Justice. And the Department of Justice also sits on ANSI's board right over by Boeing. So is there any good with the Inspector Generals? Absolutely not. So, Victor, I have to tell you that we're going to show you why, when, and how. Hopefully, we can do this very shortly in a very short video, but give you an education that when you put your tuchus in the seat of that rocket, hopefully it wasn't sent out to the lowest bidder. Let's continue on. Also, NASA themselves sit on ANSI ANAB's board, and that to me is absolutely right over by the DOJ, etc. In April of 2024, I was there supporting Sam Salipar, the engineer who was basically spoke about or did a whistleblower about 777, 787 Boeing aircraft. And I'm holding up documents at on Capitol Hill, basically confirming what Sam is saying. You have ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, is a private, not-for-profit, non-governmental corporation that has both federal agencies and corporations on its board. We're going to go through this pretty quick. You have Randy Doherty in 2015, the vice president of ANAB, chairman of the IF, and also the principal in the IF tax report, handing over leadership to this communist Chinese national Zhao Jinwu, who's been involved with our quality since 1994. He, at the time, is also the chief executive of the China National Accreditation Services that certified the Biolevel 4 lab in Wuhan, China that released the COVID virus. You also have the factor that he is mandated by his country of origin to take your data through the China National Intelligence Law, Article number 7. And he was on board between 2015 and 21. You have ANSI and ANAB. ANSI took over complete control over ANAB in 2018. You have both federal agencies and corporations on board. One of the ways our government, actually one of the ways they operate, is that President Biden came out with sanctions on Iran, on China, and also Russia. Well, through the APAC, Asian Pacific Accreditation Cooperation, they do a workaround, okay? And they sit on the International Accreditation Forum, incorporated in Delaware, right down the street from Washington, basically. You have ANAB, who sits on ANSI's board, and vice versa. You have the factor between 2015 and 21. ANSI and ANAB both sat on the IF, being controlled and manipulated by communist China, along with organizations like NASA and Boeing and Lockheed and Pfizer, federal agencies like the FBI, CDC, NIH, FAA, FDA, etc. They all sat, and many of them got hacked. You have the factor that there's over 10 different registrars sitting in China that can issue an ANSI ANAP accreditation. I'm not going to read this, but this is basically Randy, who at the time he wrote this to us, he was the vice president of ANAP, the chairman and principal on the IAF tax report, okay, and taxes, and he was also the chairman of the IAF Incorporated in Delaware. He discusses that a China National Accreditation Services certification, like most on the IAF, are equivalent in accreditation to ANSI ANAP, which means here's an actual federal solicitation in 2018 from the State Department, okay? And at that time, they were being watched over by Communist China. They were also sitting on the board through DOD, etc. This actually explains to you in great detail that it says ANSI ANAP are underwriters for the International Accreditation Forum. That means they take any systematic or any type of product failure, and they are legally responsible. You have the factor that the IAF, the International Accreditation Forum, incorporated in Delaware, is a sister organization to the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation in Australia. They are equivalent, okay? Equivalent, you gotta be kidding me. They're basically a sister organization that ANSI took over. Well, actually, they're the ones who formulated the IAF. And here it is. They are founders of the IAF, ANSI ANAP, and that is why they are underwriters. But I'm going to leave it here. As I said, NASA sits on board. So when you have Victor Glover saying that I love the watchdogs, I love that we have the thing called inspector generals. He said last weekend ahead of the Boeing Starliner launch attempt. Well, Victor, you're incorrect. Your organization, because it sits on ANSI ANAP, had been compromised by Communist China between 2015 and 21. Now, ANSI ANAP still sits on the IF, right over by China. And then I showed you APAC, the Asia Pacific Accreditation Cooperation. There's no running away from it. So when you sit in your space capsule, going to get blasted off, remember something. Be careful. 203-556-1493 or Daryl, TQRS @yahoo.com. And I thank you.